They picked what felt safe instead of what felt true. They chose what was familiar instead of what was living deep inside them. They went toward what was easy to manage, easy to explain, easy to hide in, instead of stepping into something that could have changed them in a real and lasting way. And once that truth settled inside them, it did not leave softly. It stayed. It followed them into quiet moments they could not outrun. It waited in the silence between conversations, in the long repeat of ordinary days, in the empty spaces where distractions stopped working. Slowly, they began to see how little that life was asking from them, and how much of their real self they had been shrinking just to keep things calm and under control. That was the turning point. That was when the truth stopped being easy to ignore. What they had with the other person may have looked steady from the outside, but what they had with you carried depth, meaning, and emotional weight. And things that are real do not vanish just because someone walks away from them. They remain. They sit in the back of the mind. They wait to be faced. Stay with me, because this part matters. What they pushed aside did not disappear. It only became clearer with time. And the more they tried to move on without dealing with it, the more they felt the quiet pull of what they never truly understood when they had it in front of them. At some point, they stopped lying to themselves. Not in one dramatic moment, not in one sudden flash of understanding. It happened slowly, honestly, painfully. They had to admit that they were never fully alive in the place they chose. Something important had always been missing, even if they tried hard not to say it out loud. They realized that no matter how much they told themselves they had moved on, some part of them was still emotionally unfinished with you. They never gave that connection a real chance. Not because it had no value, but because it asked for courage. Real courage. The kind that asks a person to show up without armor, to risk rejection, to risk pain, to risk being changed forever by what they feel. And now that truth has become a message they can no longer keep buried. It is not polished. It is not dramatic. It is not trying to make you feel sorry for them. It simply says this: they understand now. They see what you meant in their life. They see that what they were running from was not truly you, but the parts of themselves they were afraid to face. And once a person sees their own avoidance clearly, they cannot pretend anymore. They cannot go back to acting like nothing happened. Even if they stay silent forever, something inside them has already changed for good. The illusion has cracked, and when that illusion breaks, it leaves behind a truth that feels both humbling and heavy. Keep listening, because the next part brings everything into focus. None of this was ever about your worth. That is what you need to hold on to. It was never proof that you were not enough. It was never proof that someone else was better. It was never proof that you were easy to leave behind. What happened was always a reflection of their readiness, their fear, and the limits of their emotional capacity at that time. You were not replaced by someone more valuable. You simply crossed paths with someone who could not meet you at the depth where you were standing. That is very different. And now they are left in the aftermath of their own choices, carrying the weight of all the honesty they delayed, all the feelings they pushed down, all the truth they avoided. That is the real shock, not some sudden confession, not a dramatic return, but the full awareness finally landing inside them. You were real, and real leaves a mark that comfort, distraction, and avoidance can never erase. They want you to know that their hesitation, their mixed signals, their divided energy, all of it came from fear, not from a failure to see your value. They saw more than they admitted. That is why it stayed with them. Now that fear has been faced, it has left them open, stripped down, and deeply aware of the cost of how they handled something meaningful. And when clarity arrives like that, excuses stop working. The truth becomes too clear to soften, too clear to hide. If this is reaching you at the right time, take a breath, because there is more underneath this than first appears. In that clarity, they can finally see what they ignored. They can see what they delayed. They can see what cannot be undone. They understand the effect of their silence, their inconsistency, and their avoidance on someone who deserved honesty, full presence, and real effort. This is not a request. It is not a plea for another chance. It is not a hidden attempt to pull you back in. It is an admission, a quiet confession that only comes after reflection and growth. They now recognize the courage you showed just by being emotionally real, by asking for honesty, by refusing to settle for half attention and half love. And inside that recognition, two things rise together: respect and regret. Respect for how genuine you were, and regret for not being brave enough to meet you in that space when it mattered most. That regret is not loud. It does not need to be. It lives quietly inside them. It shows up in late-night thoughts, in tired moments, in memories they try to move past but somehow keep returning to. It reminds them of the chances they let slip away, the truth they avoided, and the connection they did not protect. Do not miss this point. They are not just missing comfort. They are realizing what real connection feels like and understanding that it cannot be copied, swapped out, or buried under something easier. A person can try to move on quickly, but the soul does not always move at that same speed. And when real understanding finally arrives, it changes how everything behind them starts to look. Through every choice they made, there was still a part of them that remained aware of you. A quiet part, a hidden part, a part they kept trying to silence. That awareness never truly left. It grew stronger over time. It turned into a kind of clarity they can no longer deny. They are not asking you to forgive them. They are not demanding anything from you. They are only offering the truth they could not say earlier. No performance, no grand speech, no mask, just honesty, finally stripped down to what it always was. They can now see that what happened was not about changing the past, because the past is already written. It is about fully admitting what that past meant. They are no longer running from the feelings they used to avoid, no longer splitting their attention, no longer hiding behind silence, distance, or convenient excuses. They have faced their hesitation. They have faced their fear of vulnerability. And through that process, they have come to one hard and simple realization. The person they struggled to truly show up for was always you. That is what gives this message its weight. That is what makes it stay. That realization has changed the way they see honesty, presence, and emotional connection. They are different in awareness now. Even if nothing changes on the outside, something has shifted deeply on the inside. And sometimes that inner shift is the most powerful part of the story. So if you have felt confused by what happened, keep going, because the deeper truth is not in what they showed you then. It is in what they finally understand now. They are not reaching from loneliness. They are not acting from impulse. This energy comes from understanding, from knowing that their choices had real consequences, from finally seeing that you were someone they did not fully appreciate when they had the chance. And that awareness has changed how they view love, connection, and emotional truth. Even if they never act on it, even if they never say a word, they cannot erase what they now see. You are not an option in their mind, not a backup, not something replaceable. You are a meaningful connection they were not ready for when it was in their hands. And that truth does not fade. It follows them. It shapes them. It shows up again whenever real emotional depth appears in their life. Because once someone knows what they lost through fear, they start to recognize that same pattern everywhere. What comes next is no longer ruled by confusion. It becomes about conscious choice, your clarity, your peace, your ability to stay grounded in your own truth without getting pulled into someone else's late understanding. That part is important. Please hear it clearly. Their realization may be real, but your self-respect still matters more than any delayed awakening. You already know deep down what feels right for you. You already know what you deserve. And now, with both their growth and your own growth in view, the next step can be taken with steadiness instead of doubt. Not from fantasy, not from pain, from clarity, from strength, from the quiet wisdom that comes when you stop asking others to define the value that was already yours from the very beginning. On the surface, a person can look fully committed somewhere else. They can appear distracted by another relationship, another routine, another path in life. But emotionally, that same person can still be tied to a bond they never fully resolved. That is what makes this kind of situation so intense. It is not always about betrayal in a shallow way. Often, it is about the complicated nature of attachment, fear, and personal growth. Fear plays a much bigger role than most people realize. Fear of closeness, fear of being seen too deeply, fear of losing control, fear of facing feelings they do not know how to hold. Those fears can quietly shape decisions. They can lead someone into other connections not because of deep love, but because those connections feel easier, safer, or less demanding. At the same time, the person who stirred something real in them remains present in the background of their mind. That presence does not need daily contact to survive. It lives through memory, comparison, and emotional truth. It keeps showing up in ways they cannot easily explain, and over time that becomes exhausting. Living split in that way drains the heart. It creates an inner conflict that comfort cannot fix. That is when reflection begins, sometimes late at night, sometimes in silence. sometimes when life no longer offers enough noise to drown out what they feel. If you have ever wondered how someone can be elsewhere and still emotionally unfinished, this is how. The body can move on before the heart catches up. And when the heart finally does catch up, it often brings a truth the mind spent months, even years, trying to avoid. Regret becomes part of that process. Not surface regret. Not the kind that passes in a day. A deeper kind. The kind that grows when someone finally sees the cost of avoiding emotional truth. They begin to understand the choices they made, the fear behind those choices, and the opportunity they let pass because they were not ready to handle something real. This kind of regret is powerful because it forces honesty. It strips away excuses. It makes a person face themselves. And that is where real growth begins. But growth is not happening only on one side. While they are waking up to what they avoided, you are also changing. You are learning to protect your peace. You are learning to set better boundaries. You are learning to hold your self-respect more firmly than before. That matters. Because when one person finally arrives at clarity, the other may already be standing in a very different place. Stronger, wiser, less willing to accept confusion. That shift protects you. It keeps any future contact, if it ever comes, from being about emotional need. It makes it about conscious choice instead, and that changes everything. It means the old pattern does not have to repeat. It means you are no longer standing where they left you. You have grown too, quietly, deeply, truly. So if they now understand your value, that does not mean you have to rush backward. Sometimes the real power is not in being chosen late. It is in being so clear within yourself that you no longer need delayed recognition to feel whole. And if that truth is landing right now, do not scroll away mentally. This may be the part you were meant to hear. There is also a difference between surface involvement and real emotional presence. A person can talk, laugh, show up, and move through daily life with someone else while still carrying an unresolved connection inside. From the outside, everything may look normal, but inwardly there can be a quiet division, a silent comparison, an unfinished feeling that keeps returning in moments they cannot fully control. That inner split is not sustainable forever. Sooner or later, reality starts pressing through the cracks. What they tried to ignore begins to speak louder. Awareness turns into understanding. Understanding slowly becomes acceptance. This is why someone's outer behavior can look disconnected from their inner truth. People do not always act in alignment with what they feel most deeply. Sometimes they act from habit, sometimes from fear, sometimes from comfort. Meanwhile, the deeper emotional truth waits underneath, unchanged. That truth keeps shaping what happiness means to them. It influences how they measure connection, fulfillment, and emotional safety. And the contrast between what they show and what they truly feel becomes harder and harder to carry. At the same time, you are not frozen in the old story. You are becoming more grounded, more aware, more certain of your value. That means if any reconnecting ever happens, it cannot happen on the same terms as before. It must come through maturity, through honesty, through emotional accountability. Otherwise, it has no foundation. This mutual growth matters because it prevents the past from simply repeating itself in a new form. It asks both people to come with awareness, not confusion, with truth, not avoidance. And that is the only kind of return that would mean anything at all. Another truth sits underneath all of this. Emotional presence is not the same as physical closeness. Someone can sit beside another person and still be emotionally somewhere else. A part of them can remain connected to what was never fully addressed. That kind of presence is quiet, but it is persistent. It shows up in random memories, emotional echoes, and unspoken comparisons that happen almost without effort. Over time, the strain of carrying that conflict grows heavier. Avoidance can only hold things together for so long. Eventually, the inside starts speaking louder than the outside performance. That is when reflection deepens. Often, it begins in ordinary moments. A drive home, a silent room, a tired night, a small memory that opens a much bigger truth. And what this teaches is simple but powerful. Real connection is not always easy. In fact, what is real often feels harder at first because it asks for honesty, vulnerability, and responsibility. Many people run from that because it unsettles their sense of control. But what is real does not stop being real just because someone avoided it. Authenticity always leaves a mark. A person may walk away from it, bury it, distract themselves from it, even replace the setting around them, but they cannot erase the impact. Sooner or later, awareness rises again. And when it does, it brings a clear understanding of what was avoided, what mattered, and what can never again be unseen. That is the deeper lesson here. Not just that they feel something now, but that truth has a way of returning when all the noise finally fades. This also says something important about timing and readiness. When a person cannot meet you deeply, it does not reduce your worth. It only reveals their capacity at that moment. That is all. Someone can recognize value and still not be able to handle it. They can feel the depth and still run from it. They can know something matters and still choose what feels easier. That does not rewrite your value. It only explains their limits. And when true understanding finally reaches them, it may change how they see the past. But it cannot change the fact that your worth never depended on their ability to honor it in real time. That is why self-respect matters so much here. Your honesty mattered. Your emotional courage mattered. Your presence mattered, even when it was not fully received, especially then, because what was true in you did not become less true because someone else was afraid of it. And through all of this, one steady truth remains. Emotional clarity keeps its value over time. It shapes how you move, how you choose, how you protect your peace going forward. If this message found you at the right moment, let it remind you of your own growth. Let it remind you to trust the inner voice that has been guiding you through all of this. Let it remind you that you do not have to chase understanding from anyone. You only have to stay aligned with what your spirit already knows. And if someone now sees clearly what they once failed to protect, that may be their lesson. Your lesson is different. Yours is to keep choosing yourself with honesty, calm, and strength. So take a breath and sit with this for a moment. Feel the weight of what was, but do not lose sight of what is still ahead. The past may explain many things, but it does not get to decide your future. You already know more than you think. You already feel the difference between what is real and what is too late. Trust that. Trust the strength you have built through experience, disappointment, and reflection. Trust the part of you that no longer wants half love, mixed effort, or unclear energy. Because that part of you has grown wise. And now, whether anything happens next or not, you are in a position to choose from clarity instead of longing. That is the true shift. They may now understand what you meant. They may now carry the weight of their own avoidance. They may now see that what they felt with you was deeper than what they chose at the time. But your path is not about waiting for someone else to catch up to the truth. Your path is about standing firmly in your own. If they come forward, you will know how to meet that moment. If they do not, you will still be whole. Either way, you are no longer moving from confusion. You are moving from self-respect, from peace, from the kind of inner clarity that cannot be shaken by delayed words or late realizations. And that is where your power is now. Quiet, steady, unmistakable. What stays with them is their lesson. What stays with you is your truth. And if you carry that truth forward, no matter what happens next, you will not lose yourself again.